In this tutorial, we're going to be covering setting up a lockdown using priority global actions and global linkages. In this scenario, the end user wants to lock down access to a specific set of doors based on a card read. We're going to refer to this card as a red card. During the lockdown, only first responders will have access to doors affected by this lockdown. The lockdown will be restored from a second card, or card read. We're going to refer to this as our green card. In this scenario, this will not require any policy changes or implementation or utilizing any macros and triggers. We're going to be using only priority global actions and global linkages. Some of the requirements for this tutorial: you will need version 5.12.0 of ACM, which introduced the priority actions for global actions. We will need one token for the red card, one token for the green card, and tokens for first responders. And you will need separate access groups and roles for the first responders versus your normal access users.
Okay, so the first thing that we're going to end up doing to create this lockdown scenario is we're going to go ahead and create the access group and role for the first responders. So keep in mind that the first responders will not have access during normal operating hours, only during this lockdown. So we'll go into roles, access groups. We're going to add an access group for first responders. We're going to make this scheduled 24 hours active so that it can be used at any time, but we are going to keep it uninstalled. We want to move all of the doors that the first responders would have access to during the lockdown from left to right. So this could be a series of doors or a set of doors depending on your application. But the important thing here is to make sure that this is created uninstalled. Once we've created the access group, we're going to go ahead and create the role that's associated to that access group. So we're going to create a physical access group for first responders. We'll set the date out. We do want to install this. And then we'll associate that first responders access group. So just taking a quick look, when we look at our access groups, all of our normal access groups are installed and used at this point. The only one that's not is our first responders access group. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at the identities that we'll be using for this scenario. So I have three cards or three identities that are going to be associated with this. I have my red card that will be triggering the lockdown. I have my green card that will be restoring the lockdown. And then I have my first responders, which will be allowed through doors when we're generating the lockdown. So if we take a look at the red card has a role that allows them access to all doors, so they can trigger this from any door on the system. Same thing with the green card. We look at the green card. Its role gives them access to all doors. But let's take a look at that first responders, and we want to make sure that we give this first responder only access to the first responders role. So in this case, this token will not be able to be used for anything other than access to doors during the lockdown. I do have token numbers associated with each one of those cards. Okay. From there, we're going to go ahead and create the global actions and global linkages that will run each one of these lockdown or lockdown restore events. For the lockdown event, we'll be creating 4 global actions, 3 which will actually run the actions, and then 1 that will be an action group to group all of those actions together. And then the same thing will happen for the restore of those actions. So we'll have 3 restore actions, and then we'll group them together so that it makes it easier when we create our global linkages. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a global action that will uninstall all of the existing access groups on the system. The idea behind this is that during a lockdown emergency, all of these existing identities on the system will not be allowed through the doors. The only people that will be allowed through is first responders. So we'll go ahead and uninstall all of these access groups. And then we're going to create a install first responders, because now we need to install that access group so they have the ability to get through doors. And then the third thing is we want to take all of the doors and put them into a different door mode. So we want to change the door mode of all of the doors on our system during a lockdown to card only mode. Meaning, if a door is in an unlocked state or card or pin or some other state, we actually want to change it so that it is going to be card only. So our type is going to be door mode. Our subtype is going to be card only, and this is where the new feature of priority is going to come into play. We want to make sure that for any door mode change that we use for this lockdown scenario, that we create it with priority so that no other event, such as a schedule, can modify this lockdown scenario. So we're going to select priority, and we're going to select all of our doors, and we're going to move them from left to right. Okay. So we have the first three actions for triggering the lockdown. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to group those actions together using an action group. Keep in mind for the naming convention of all of this, I'm using numbers and letters just to keep them at the top of the list. I do also find that it helps so that I can keep them organized. This is completely up to you how you want to label these, but a good labeling structure is very important. So we're going to name this our lockdown and installing first responders, and we're going to create an action group. I don't want to move all of the new global actions that we just created over into this action group. Okay. So now this action group will actually run the lockdown event that we'd like, and we need to create the reverse. So we actually need to create a restore action group and add global actions as well. So first thing we'll do here is we want to do reinstall all of the existing access groups. So we're just going to do the opposite of what we did before. So we're going to install all of these access groups. And then we're going to go ahead and uninstall our first responders. Okay. And then we're going to restore all of our doors back to their normal mode. Okay. So we're going to do a door mode, and we're going to set it to restored. And keep in mind, because we did a door mode change in the first event with priority, we must do a restore event with priority as well. Otherwise, this event will not run. The last thing that we'll do is we'll create a lockdown complete. We've restored everything back to normal, so this is going to be an action group to run the last three events that we just created. Now we need to go ahead and create the global linkages that are going to run our lockdowns and restore our lockdown. So the first one that we're going to create is our activation of lockdown. So this is going to be our lockdown activate from our red card. Okay, so when the red card is presented, it's going to initiate the lockdown. We do want this to be available 24 hours a day, but the schedule can be modified depending on your application. So we'll create that and we'll save it. The device that we're going to use is at a door, so we're using a door, a card read to create or to initiate this. In most cases, you're going to want this done from any door on your system, but you could narrow this down to a specific door or a specific set of doors by moving the correct doors from left to right. So in my scenario, I'm using every door on the system. The event that we're going to use, we're actually going to use two events. We're going to use local grant and local grant not used. The reason that we use local grant and local grant not used is local grant signifies that somebody uh, had a valid card read at a door, opened the door and went through it. The local grant not used means that they just presented the card to the door but did not perform any additional actions after that. So the door was not opened. We're going to trigger this event from a specific token. So from the red card that I've already created, so we'll go ahead and put in red and search for that card and move it from left to right. Make sure you're clicking save after each change in each one of these menus. And then the action that we're going to run is our lockdown. So we want to move this from left to right as well. Okay, so this is telling me that if this token is presented and granted at any one of the doors on my system, I'm going to run this action. Okay, so now we need a restore. So we're going to do the opposite. So restore our lockdown from our green card. Same thing, the device is going to be a door. I want this to be any door on my system. The event for this is going to be a valid card at an unauthorized reader. Because the door is already in a lockdown state, we need to make sure that the event is correct so that we can restore the lockdown. So we're going to choose valid card at an unauthorized reader, and we're going to now choose our green card and move it from left to right. And then the action that we're going to take is restoring the lockdown. So we should have 2 global linkages here, and we've got our 8 global actions, 4 to initiate the lockdown and 4 to restore the lockdown. What I'd like to show is we can see what will happen during the lockdown by triggering the lockdown from the global actions page. So if I go ahead and execute this from the global actions page, you'll see I get a notification that it's been successfully executed, and all of my doors are now in priority card only mode. So any of the doors that can be affected will be. If I go back over to my global actions and I hit the restore, get a notification that it has been successfully restored, and all of my doors go back to the normal mode as where they should be. So now I'll go ahead and show you guys the normal operation for this lockdown. As you can see here, I have several cards. I have my red card to initiate my lockdown. I have my green card to restore the lockdown. I have a first responders token, and then I also have a normal users token. So we'll go ahead and start by looking at when a normal identity is present or card is presented to the door, it allows me through. If I present the first responders card, it does not give me access. Okay. So from here, what I'll do is I will present the red card to the reader. And what you'll notice is the system goes into priority lockdown card only mode. If a normal user tries to present a card to the door, it will not allow them through. But if a first responder presents a card to the door, it will allow them through. And then I can go ahead and restore the lockdown from my green card, which restores the system back to its normal state where normal users can get through, but first responders cannot.